Everybody, it's the third lecture of chapter 1 about ordinary generating function. So 5 minutes about that to recall where we stopped in the previous lecture. So you remember we were taking generating function of paths. A path is very arbitrary sequence of vertices in a set S. And the paths are weighted by any arbitrary valuation to any pair of elements of S to associate a weight, monomial or polynomial. And the weight of a path is a product or weight of all the elementary steps. We define a self-avoiding walk or self-avoiding path. Walk or path is the same. All the vertices are disjoint. Elementary circuit is a self-avoiding path by coming back to itself. Every vertex are disjoint except the first and last one. And a cycle is an elementary circuit up to a circular permutation. And then we prove by classical technique of linear algebra that the sum of the weight of all the paths going from the vertex I to vertex j is the ratio by nij and d, where d, the denominator, d for demeter or determinant, is the sum over the weight of all configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle, minus 1 power the number of cycle. And the numerator is something like the sum over all configuration, a pair of a self-avoiding path, and a configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle. And more, the path is self-avoiding and is disjoint from all the cycle. So this is typically the numerator and denominator. And we have proved this proposition by showing that the sum of the weight of all the paths is in fact the inverse of the matrix 1 minus A. If A is the matrix Aij, where I will consider the weight on the path, the weight of the elementary step going from I to j is just the value Aij. So I consider Aij as just formal variable, n by n formal variable, and the sum of the weight of all these paths is just the inverse of the matrix. Then applying classical linear algebra, inverse of a matrix is a cofactor divided by the determinant. And so I get a proof, linear algebra proof of my theorem. Instead of taking the cofactor of the matrix A, I take 1 minus A, which is the same but much more convenient for combinatorics and paths. So now the new part of this lecture is to give a bijective proof of the formula. And this is typically of the bijective proof, like a killing involution. Many times in combinatorics now we are working with this kind of proof where you have some term plus, some term minus, and I am going to kill them 2 by 2. So I just multiply by d, so I have a path, and then a configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle, and then something interpreting the numerator. So let's give some notation. Ch of ij is a set of paths, all paths going from I to j. I put ch, it's in French chemin. Chemin is path. And d for determinant is a set of configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle. So this was the denominator. And then I define the cofactor of ij is the pair of a pair of a path. So cofactor is it's a path. It's this configuration. No, it's a path eta going from I to j, which is self-avoiding, and a configuration of cycle 2 by 2 disjoint. This is just the interpretation of the numerator in the previous theorem. And I define now the new set Eij is to be all a pair of a path here a pair of configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle, but which are not in the COF of ij. So the idea is I am going to take all this term. It's a pair of a path and a configuration of cycle. Some of them are with a plus, some of them are with a minus. And I'm going to join them 2 by 2. They are going to kill to be associated 2 by 2. So there is a big cancellation which is going to happen. And what remains, when I have killed everybody, what remains is just the n. What remains is exactly this. The path omega will be just reduced to a blue path self-avoiding walk, and the configuration will be in condition self-avoiding with eta. And I claim proposition, there exists an involution. So a map involution which is itself its own inverse. The square of the phi is going to be itself. So such as that. So if you have a path and a configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle, and you send it on another path, another configuration of cycle, then the total weight is preserved. The weight of the path multiplied the total weight is preserved, but then the number of cycle S is R plus or minus 1. So if you can find such a phi, you are going to associate to many such pair, another pair, which are going to cancel in the big summation. In this big summation, this term will be cancelled 2 by 2 for certain set of pair, but phi will not be defined on this subset. Is it clear for everybody? So phi is in this pair. It's not defined. Phi is not defined on this subset. COF is a subset of this pair of paths and the configuration of a 2 by 2 disjoint cycle. So phi will join a pair of a path and configuration with another pair. They will kill 2 by 2. They will be killed 2 by 2. And what will remain in this huge killing, what will remain is exactly the pair which corresponds to this, the pair of a special path, a special configuration. So it is clear that if I can find such a phi, then I will have a proof of my theorem. F? Phi? S, yes. I denote this. There is a path and a configuration of cycle. So there is a new path and a new configuration of cycle. The only difference is that the number of cycles here will differ from this number of cycles by 1.
On the right-hand side should be S. The prime of the last term.
Here?
Of S. Subscript S.
Ah, yes, S, okay. It's a typing machine. It's make a mistake. So you see see, I'm going to associate such a pair from by a general path, omega, a general configuration of cycle. Such pair is going to be associated by phi to another pair, and the R will be plus or minus 1, and so the sign will change, but the weight must remain the same. So these two pairs will be paired together, they will kill, and what will remain in this huge killing, its term with a path omega will be reduced to the blue path, and the configuration gamma will be reduced to this one, which is disjoint from the blue path. So if I have such an involution, I will get a proof, a bijective proof of my theorem, and which will give me a bijective proof of a classical theorem in linear algebra, very classical. So you can imagine how can we prove cofactor determinant with only manipulation bijection. So this gives you some new insight on a very, very classical subject. So construction of the involution phi. So you take any pair, omega and configuration of a path in this set. So it's a set which avoids the cofactor configuration. And I define L, the smallest integer between 0 and n. N is the length of the path. You take the smallest integer such that one of the two conditions appear. First condition, there exists an index k, strictly less than L, such that Sk equals Sl, which means the path is making a loop. Or maybe Sl, the vertex, belong to one of the cycle of the configuration, which means the path is going to intersect one of the cycle. Something is missing here. Yes, this is the picture, you see. So the path omega, you go, maybe it make many loops, maybe intersect all the cycle. This is a green cycle, the configuration, which are 2 by 2 disjoint. The path, blue path can be any path. So to say that this index L exists means, in fact, that the configuration, this configuration is not in the cofactor configuration. The cofactor configuration means that the path avoid all the cycle, and the cycle are 2 by 2 disjoint and disjoint from the path, and the path is a self-avoiding walk in the cof configuration. So because I take the involution restricted to all the pairs which are not here, so this index exists. Second condition, second lemma, remark, L cannot be in both, cannot satisfy both 1 and 2. So remember what is 1. 1 is the path is making a loop. 2 is the path is intersecting one of the cycle. But I take the smallest L. So suppose it satisfies both conditions. So SL is intersecting one of the cycle, but SL is SK with K less than L. So L is not the smallest integer intersecting the cycle because this one also already intersects the cycle. So you cannot have both conditions at the same time. It's this or this, else. No, not the two conditions at the same time. So I go back to my picture. So see, in that case, I am in condition 1. Sk, and then the path is making a loop. And maybe it's going to intersect the cycle, but I am in condition 1. So I define phi in this condition. The image of the pair is going to be a new path and a new sequence of cycle. The idea is just you take this cycle here, which does not intersect any of the green cycle. You take it and you add it to the configuration of cycle. So I add this new cycle gamma. Gamma is all this portion of the blue path. Sk plus 1, Sl minus 1. So I add this gamma up to a circular permutation. I take gamma the cycle. I added to the configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle. It will be disjoint from the green cycle. And now I delete this part from the path. So I get a pair of the blue path deleted by the red cycle and the configuration of cycle green plus the red one. Now if you look carefully, now you are in this. I am in the second condition now. Because if you follow the path omega, it's going to hit for the first time. There is no smallest integer. It's going to hit for the first time the configuration of cycle. It has not made any loop before. So this is the smallest case, the smallest integer satisfying condition 2. Now, so when I am condition 2, I define the image of phi by condition 2. You put back the image is just you take the cycle. I am hitting the cycle for the first time. You take the cycle gamma, you put it inside the path omega, and you delete gamma from the configuration of cycle. So gamma is deleted. Gamma is gamma j in this notation. So yeah, you apply IM condition 2. I apply this phi defined in condition 2, and I get back the same configuration as before, and I am back to condition 1. So phi is an involution. If I apply phi twice, I go from condition 1 to condition 2, and then 2 to condition 1. And so this satisfies the condition of this proposition. That I have a pair. To a pair, I associate another pair. Because I am just changing the cycle, I delete from a path, I put the cycle in the coefficient of path. So what the weight is the same. The total weight of the configuration is just the product of the weight of all the edges you can see in the picture. So I have not changed, the total set of edges has not changed. What has changed is the parity of the number of cycles. So the two terms are going to cancel. And in this big cancellation, what remains is all the pair where I cannot define phi, I cannot define phi, and where I cannot define phi is only when I am in cofactor ij, which means I am in a pair of paths, a blue path self-avoiding, which avoid all the cycle of the configuration of green cycle. And so this is a cofactor. Yes?
Suppose you start with case 2, right?
As the case 2, the second condition? Here, yes. So you start with this condition. I have my configuration of cycle is the green cycle plus the red cycle. And the path omega is the blue path, all the blue paths which avoid the red edges. So condition 2 is you take the first time, sk in this case. No, it will be sk. It's the first time the path, the blue path, is intersecting one of the cycle. I am in that case. So when you are in case 2, the first time you intersect a cycle, this is in fact the cycle gamma. So the path in the image of phi, the path omega prime will be the path omega where you insert all the sequence of vertices inside the path omega. So the path becomes longer, and you delete this cycle from the configuration of 2x2 disjoint cycle. Is it more clear?
But what if you start like with that red thing is not there and you start with the green part?
If there is no red,
Yeah.
so I follow, then so this would be the first time I hit the green configuration. Then here you add in the blue path, when you are here, then the next vertex of the blue path will be this, and then you continue like this.
So you just add the cycle.
Yes, you just inside the path, you insert the cycle, one of the cycle of the configuration. The first, and it is you insert in maybe the path intersects several times the same cycle, but you take the first time you intersect, the smallest integer, following the path. You see, you take the first time, else you intersect the cycle, or else you are making a loops inside the path. But when you make a loops inside the path, you cannot say that I am in condition 1. This loops is going to be disjoint of the green cycle. Yeah, maybe it's I just repeat. See, you take you can think of this condition. L is the smallest integer L, the smallest integer. So the first vertex in the blue path, such that else, when you arrive at L, you intersect yourself in the blue path, or else you intersect one of the cycle. I claim that I cannot have the two conditions at the same time. Because you see here in this picture, L is here. So you follow, you arrive at L, L the smallest integer in the past, such that here SL equals SK. L is the smallest. I claim that L cannot be also the smallest integer where I intersect one of the cycle, because I have already, if I intersect one of the cycle here, I would have already intersected the same cycle in K. So L is not the smallest. It was K the smallest. In case you intersect, there is a green cycle here, then I should be in condition 2. So I can have at the same time a loop of the past and a cycle. I can have both at the same time. Intersect in a certain point. I intersect myself in the blue path. I intersect also a cycle, a green cycle. But then I claim I am in condition 2. Because if you intersect a green cycle here, this was the first time, K is the first time you intersect a green cycle. See, it's not L. So there is these two remarks. I cannot have both conditions, and the existence of L is equivalent to be in, not to be in the cofactor configuration.
How do you ensure that the red cycle which you generate is non-intersect with the other cycle?
Yes, good remark. I have to. The red cycle is not intersecting the green one, because if it was intersecting, yes, if it was intersecting, then L should not be the smallest integer.
Yes, right. Smallest integer, again.
Even if the intersect, even if you intersect, you try to intersect the last time, it should be L. But if it's a cell, then you have intersect already before. No, good remark. You have to give the complete proof. You have to add this remark that gamma is disjoint from all the green cycle. So, any other remark? Everybody is convinced of the rigorous proof? By constructive proof, you see. It's a
Proof isn't over here. You only define.
okay, so I have proved with some amazing, and I think in elementary linear algebra class, nobody has seen such a proof, but it's very instructive. I give this proof straight away. There is some more elegant proof using heaps of pieces and all this, but this is a direct proof. And this is typical of proof in combinatorics, where you have a killing involution proof. You join the term, there is some plus and minus, and like this, you see, you have a big identity. Sometimes you have a big summation to do, and there is some positive term, some negative term, and then you want to prove that this is equal to something. So usually the proof is to find an involution, phi, which associates the term 2 by 2. So it's not canonical. I have maybe many different involution phi, but they associate the term 2 by 2, the same weight. So it's a constructive proof with a bijection. And then what remains is the sum of the term where you cannot define the involution. If you are lucky, there is only a positive term. Usually it's here you have only positive. Positive means there is a plus. Maybe the weight is negative, but weight is formal thing. And so maybe there is still some plus and minus. Maybe try to apply a second involution, killing. In general, the nice theorem is that there is a huge summation, and what remains is finite and positive. So this is an analog of all the classical matrix inclusion-exclusion principle. But I don't like at all inclusion-exclusion, because you can't. It's for drunk people. They drink too much wine. They count how many students here, and I see everybody double, triple, and I have counted too many. So I am going to subtract what I've counted twice, and then I subtract again. I am too much wine, and then I subtract too much, so I have to again to. So this is. So if you do rigorous proof like this, then you have to. I have counted 4 times, 3 times. So no, I prefer. This is a modern way of. So in this class, you will never find any inclusion-exclusion principle.
But is it possible to formally replace Mobius inversion with this? I mean, is there a class of process for
Good
Because the
remark.
Mobius function is plus or minus 1.
Mhm.
Very nice process.
Yes, for many nice, but not for all of them, plus or minus. So no. To connect the two, I don't know. It's two different methodologies, two different techniques, but maybe there is some. There is Mobius inversion. There is this involution principle. It's two different things, which probably overlap each other, but it would be good to maybe to try to connect. So an example and an exercise. Example. So I take the set of vertices is two elements. What is called usually the transition matrix. So that the weight, here you have a weight T. When you go from 1 to 2, you have a weight 2T. When you go here, you have a weight T, we have a weight T. So T is going to count the length of the path. And I want to have the generating function of all the paths, starting at vertex 1 and ending in vertex 1. So generating function is a rational fraction. In general, this formula is nice when the set of elements is finite. So my lemma numerator by denominator will give me a rational fraction. So here is a very simple rational fraction. Now instead of course, you can compute the determinant of 1 minus this, but let's apply directly our lemma with our proposition. So the denominator is the weight, total weight of 2 by 2 disjoint configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle. So no cycle, the weight is 1. One cycle, so it's a loop on 2, or maybe a cycle of length 2. So I have 1 minus T plus 2T2. No plus now, it's minus 1 to the square. T to the square, there is only one possibility, I put 2 loops. And so I get this denominator. Now the numerator is a total weight of configuration of a blue path, self-evolving, and configuration of 2 by 2 green cycle. So what is a blue path? Self-evolving path going from 1 to 1. It's reduced to a point. So the blue path is this, reduced to empty path, reduced to the length is 0, but there are empty paths. There is many empty paths. There is one for each vertex of the graph. So eta is reduced to a blue point. Now on the second one, I can put nothing, or maybe to put loops. So the numerator is 1, so it should be minus T. Second error of typing the Xavier characters of writing. Oh, it's still, so it's minus T. So the generating function for such work is a numerator divided by denominator. So it's easy with 2. So I put this because it's related to the following exercise. Following exercise, directed path on a square lattice. So we are going to count the number of directed paths on a square lattice. What is a directed path? A directed path is a path having only elementary step. So on a square lattice, you can go east, south, or north. And it's self-evolving. Well, it's a big problem in statistical mechanics to count the number of self-evolving work on a square lattice. So in general, there is just asymptotic or critical exponent. There is no explicit formula. But here I am in a very, very simple case where I restrict myself to self-evolving works, which I call directed, because they tend to go to the east. So they are self-evolving means that when you go north, you cannot immediately go down. And when you go south, if you have a south step, it will not be followed by a north step. So in fact, I am just counting, I want to count how many words in 3 letters east, north, and south, such as that there is no factor ns and no factor sn. So it's a rational fraction. If you know language theory, this is a rational language. This is come from computer science. But the exercise is to show that the generating function for such path is this nice rational fraction. Maybe it's a minus 3t again. So check if the denominator is good, and if you look your notes, it's exactly the same as the one before. And the hint for the exercise, find a bijection between this path and some path on the graph with 3 vertices. And this graph of 3 vertices is related to the graph of before with only 2 vertices. So this is some usual, when you have some object, especially in physics, there is many objects on the square lattice, and when there is a rational fraction, you try to encode this object, maybe it's an infinite path, to encode them by some path on a finite graph. The idea is that when you go on this graph, it's like the idea, if you know automata theory in computer science, each time you are when I go south, I am in a state where the state told me, don't go to the north. When I am going east, then the state told me, oh, you can go anywhere you want. So this is the intuition, that you follow the path. So you are following a path, following this green path, you are following a path in a finite graph. In each state tell you where you are. It's a kind of memory. You remember what you have done, and the memory is finite, which explains that the generating function is going to be a rational fraction. So this is typical of a proof where you encode your object by your word, which is called rational language in computer science. So you encode it by your path on the graph, and the graph is finite. And each vertex of the graph is tell you where you are in your memory. We will do this again in a very simple example with the genetic function for Fibonacci polynomial. So another example now, with bounded Dick path. So you remember at the end of the first lecture of this chapter, we define Dick path. Dick path is a path on the square lattice, starting at the point 0, 0, and then you finish at the level 0. You never go below the x-axis. So it passes on the positive part of the quadrant of the n cross n. And the path is such that each elementary step is else you go to the northeast to the next neighbor in the square, or else you go to the southeast. And I have claimed quickly at the end of one of the lectures that this Dick paths of length 2n are counted by Catalan number. And the proof is that you put in blue the first time you touch the 0 x-axis, you are sure to go back to the 0 level because you must go back here. So you have the blue edges. You cut your path in 4 parts. The first blue edges, then all the part which is above this line, red line at level 1, then these blue edges going down at level 0, and then what remains of the Dick path. And this gives you a decomposition of the Dick path in a pair of blue edges and a pair of 2 Dick paths, which give you this equation. Now we apply the lemma, formal lemma of the previous chapter, and I put only a t, not a t to the square, because I'm counting Dick paths by half of the length. So I'm counting Dick paths by only the number of edges going down. So I have this quadratic equation, and it's the same as binary tree. So Dick paths are counted by Catalan number. We'll see in chapter 3 the bijection. There is classical bijection between binary tree and Dick path. You can start to find one, but to have this equation, the same equation, from the same equation, you can try to recursively define the bijection so that it respects the left equation here is left and right up tree. Here the decomposition was in 2 Dick paths. If you respect the decomposition in both cases, then you can automatically get a bijection. We will see this in chapter 3. Now, application of my main formula, numerator divided by determinant, is to give the generating function of Dick path bounded by the level k. So the height of the Dick path is the maximum level of its vertices. Here k equals 0, 1, 2, 3. And I want to have the generating function of dig paths which are bounded by level k. So this happened in many, many papers in literature are involved with this kind of problem. So dig path, in fact, is just a path in a one-dimensional path. It seems to be a two-dimensional path, but in fact it's a path starting at level 0 on this point, and you go up and down, and you go back at level 0. And here you go up and down, and you are not general dig path, you are on the infinite line of positive integer. It's a walk, a promenade on the positive integer, but when you are bounded, your path go up and down in this finite segment, 0k. So I can apply my general formula, numerator, cofactor, and determinant, to get the generating function of such a dig path. And I claim that the generating function of bounded dig path at height k is simply the ratio of two polynomials, fk divided by fk plus 1, where f means the Fibonacci numbers. So this is a transition matrix in my walk, going up and down. When you go up, it's here. When you go down, it's here. 0 everywhere. The term aij of the matrix is just 0 or maybe t. And I'm going to apply my main proposition about generating function for path. And fk, what is a polynomial fk? It's called Fibonacci polynomial. It is a sum over all matching. What is a matching? Oh, you don't have a... I delete the transparency. So matching in the segment is a set of 2 by 2 disjoint edges. And for each edges, you put -1 power the number of elements of the matching. Matching means a set of 2 by 2 disjoint edges or dimers on a segment graph. It's a pair ii plus 1. Take any set of such d by 2 disjoint edges, because it's a matching, and the polynomial will be -x power the number of elements of the matching, called Fibonacci polynomial. For example, take f4 of x. Here there is no edges. You can put one edges, -x, or maybe you put two edges, plus x2. And you get this Fibonacci f4 polynomial. So if you take a dig path, which is now a path on this line going up and down, apply the theorem. So the denominator is just the sum of the weight of all the configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle. My green cycle 2 by 2 disjoint becomes this. It's only cycle of length 2. Because of the dig path, only cycle with a dig path is maybe this cycle of length 2. There is no jump. Of course, if you are going up, and then a big jump to go down, cycle, there will be more cycle. But here, because I go up and down, when I have level I go to level I plus 1, or I go back to level I minus 1. So only possible cycle of in this condition is only configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle of length 2. So you put, this is an example of cycle of length 2. Now cycle of length 2, you put them in correspondence with edges, a matching, and so you get this polynomial fk plus 1. The denominator of my generating function is the sum of the weight of all edges 2 by 2 disjoint. And now the numerator, I want to have the paths are starting at 0 and going back to 0. So again, I have a self-avoiding walk going from 0 to 0. It's a blue point. And the rest is a configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint cycle, so 2 by 2 disjoint dimers, which are disjoint and does not intersect the blue point. So now the polynomial enumerating this is exactly fk. It's just a shift, fk plus 1 when you have a k plus 1 point, and here you have fk because you delete the blue point. And so I have this proposition that the rational fraction for dig path bounded by height k is a ratio of these two polynomials. Fibonacci polynomials are very very, very classical. So let's take a break about Fibonacci polynomial. So I just repeat, Fibonacci polynomial is the sum of the weight of all the matching, and I put a -1. I put a -1 for each dimers. So here I should put I put variable x instead of t. A and k is the total number of matching of the segment 1n with k dimers. So this is the same notation, equivalent notation. So let's give the generating function for Fibonacci polynomial in the same flavor that the exercise we have done before. So this will give you the spirit of coding something which may be infinite in terms of a walk in a finite graph, in terms of spirit of automata. So you read your segment. You are here in the segment, and then you are touching the dimers. So when I start, I am at S1. A loop means I am reading some isolated point. The isolated point means there is no dimers. Now, what means this? When I go from 1 to 2, it means I touch a dimers. So when I read the dimers, I am going from this to this. I am adding a new point. The weight of the dimer is -x. And now what means here? It means that I am not going to follow any other loops. It means when I have started to read the dimers, I must finish to read the dimers. You see, these loops means the spirit of this loop is here. I am going to this state because I am reading the first point of the dimers, and when I am here, I am forced to read the second point of the dimers, and then you can do everything you want. So once you have read the dimer, you can make some put isolated point many. So it means you are making many loops. So each time you read a dimer, you do this. So you see this flavor of you are reading an object which can be any length, and reading this is just moving in this graph with two vertex, with the weight t when you read an isolated point. There is no dimers, or minus t followed by t when you are reading dimers. There is two vertices with a weight -x. And so this gives me a bijection between matching of the segment graph, configuration of 2 by 2 disjoint dimers, and path of length n, going from S1 to S1, yes, because if I stop the path here, means I have started to read the dimers, but you have to finish to read your dimers with this weight for the path. And so I have again, I apply my lemma, my proposition. The denominator is no cycle. 2 by 2 disjoint green cycle, there is one, and one here. So the denominator, the generating function for Fibonacci polynomial, is 1 minus t plus xt2. So I hope there is no mistake in the sign. There is something wrong? Amri, no?
No, I'm just confused. It looks like each dimer is giving t squared.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
T is a number of point.
Oh, okay.
Maybe t was don't be confused with dict path.
The number of dimers.
Now t, I am taking the generating function for Fibonacci polynomial. X is counting dimers.
I was thinking heaps of pieces.
And t is counting the n. T is counting the number of points of the segment. Fn of x. This is the generating function for bounded path is fk divided by fk plus 1. So the index n is the number of points of the graph segment. So we have this generating function, and when it's a rational generating function, there is a recurrence relation. I said last time. So the recurrence relation is just yes. Oh yes. Third mistake. Typo. Well, I have to improve my typing. My typing machine is not very accurate. It was working in front, but here, with the humidity and the flood of Chennai, I have an excuse. There's many mosquitoes around my machine. So if you tell me at the end of the class how many mistakes, and I will correct in the slide when I put the slide on the web. It will be on the video, but it will be corrected on the slide. So in a rational fraction, the coefficients are satisfy the linear recurrence relation with constant term. It's not like the p recursive with polynomial. In that case, all the term, the coefficient of the recurrence relation is exactly the coefficient of the denominator. So you get this recurrence relation with the x for the polynomial. So if you put x equal -1, you get the Fibonacci number. This is why it's called Fibonacci polynomial. So the sum of the absolute value sum of the coefficient are always the Fibonacci numbers. So exercise show that the number of matching with k dimers, so the coefficient of the Fibonacci polynomial, are this binomial coefficient. It's difficult to give exercise in this class because else they are easy, or else they are very difficult, because bijective exercise, else bijection is, you can find it in 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If you have to think more, then you will spend 3 days to find bijection. So there is no middle term between the two. But this is not difficult. You should. So this means this identity, this relation as exercise means that if you take the Pascal triangle, as it is called in the West, if you sum integer like this, then you get the Fibonacci numbers. And the sum of the coefficient of the Fibonacci polynomial are exactly the Fibonacci number. Sum of the coefficient in absolute value of the Fibonacci polynomial. So this go back to Pingala, as I mentioned in the previous lecture. Pingala, he was considering word in two kinds of word. Lago is short syllable, and Gouraud long syllable. So it was word in G and L, and you want to count how many such words or of length n, and how to produce all the words. So there is some algorithm. There is some very interesting things have been done. This thanks to Amri, who gave me the paper, a whole paper about Pingala work and all work which are done in India for the 15th century after Pingala by Balata and etc. etc. So the amazing too. So what I understand from the paper is that there is two ways of counting such a sequence of syllables. It's maybe you can count according to the number of letters of syllab, and then there is more counting where by number of pada. Each pada is 4 feet, and each feet is a pada. Or maybe you can count also by number of matra. Matra is a time measure, and matra for a short syllab is only 1, and for long syllab it's 2 matra. So if you count, so this is a short syllab, and this is a long syllab. So if you count by number of matra, then you get the Fibonacci. So it was maybe not explicit in Pingala, although you have the Fibonacci number 5. You have all the matching of in one of the scripture of the. He has all matching for a graph of length 5. So this is a flavor of the Pascal triangle and of the Fibonacci behind this. So it's very very interesting. Combinatorics in India. So Fibonacci is supposed to be the 10th century, but in India it was implicit already, or explicit in other later. So I'm not a specialist of all the history of, but it should be more known in the Western country where we have. So exercise Fibonacci and polyominoes. A stacked polyomino. So a polyomino, it's a union of square in the square lattice. It's a union which is connected, a connected union of square, and such that the interior is also connected. I mean, you cannot have two polyomino which touch just by one corner. So it's so this kind of things. Maybe polyomino may have a hole inside. So the general problem of counting polyomino is very hard. There is no explicit formula. You can count polyomino by the area, the number of cells, or you can count them by the perimeter, the number of edges of the outside perimeter. So stacked polyomino means it's a polyomino like this. You start with the path you go up, and then you go down. This is called a stack, so it's like if you take two Ferrer diagrams and you glue them together. One Ferrer written to the left, one Ferrer written to the right. You glue them and you forget where you glue them. So prove that the number of stacked polyomino with perimeter 2n plus 4 is the Fibonacci numbers 2n. Not difficult. Find a bijection between this kind of polyomino and words of length 2n, which are in fact a coding of a matching, or it's a word which are a sequence of x and AA for dimers. Star means it's a sequence of such a thing, which are else this or else this. Or if you prefer, to work with matching of the graph segment. So you have to find, there is an explicit bijection. Sometimes you put an x, sometimes you put AA, so you will have a word, a sequence of x and AA, of a short syllable and long syllable, which is going to encode this two-dimensional polyomino.
Perimeter includes the base?
Yeah, yes. Perimeter, the whole thing when you turn around the... Hmm? No hole, yes. No hole, eh? No hole, eh? It's a like the union, so you can cut anywhere and you get a union of two Ferrer if you cut at the maximum level, a Ferrer on the right and a Ferrer diagram on the left. And you glue them together, you forget where you make the separation, and this stack polyomino. It's like a stack. It's a curve. You have a horizontal line, and you go up like this, and then you go down. So it's a Fibon, lattice animal. Yes, if you replace each cell by a point, then this is called in physics a lattice animal. An animal is a set of points on the square lattice, such that you can go, if you take any pair of 2 points, you can go from one to another by a path going east, west, north, or south. It's a kind of connected set of points. You can go from any vertex of the animal to another one by a path going in the forward direction. If you go only in east or north, then you get directed animal, and there will be some section on directed animal as a wonderful example of algebraic power series. The enumeration of directed animal is algebraic. And animal or polyomino are the same things if you prefer to work with cell or with point. It's what's called an animal because like an animal growing, the cells are growing. But if you remember in which order the cells are growing, then this is not at all it's kind of a label animal. It's different. So Fibonacci and Chebyshev are very close together. Maybe not in the history, but yeah, it's almost the same polynomial up to some change of variable. So let's give the relation. So I remind you, trigonometry. Chebyshev second kind. It's defined, UN is a polynomial, uniquely defined, such that you have this nice formula. The sinus of n plus 1 theta is sinus theta multiplied by UN of cosine theta. So in UN of x is a very classical, well-known since a long time, probably in India. I know Euler, I get this Fibonacci polynomial was already in Euler also. But probably they were in India long before. And this polynomial are a sequence of orthogonal polynomial. Orthogonal means there is a certain measure. In classical analysis, there is a product of two polynomials such that if n is different of m, then it's 0. And if n equal m, it gives you 1. It's an orthogonality relation. There will be, I will give you in another year whole classes on combinatorics of orthogonal polynomial theory. So Chebyshev belongs to this class of orthogonal polynomials. There is a certain measure below the integral, which make you a scalar product. They are orthogonal for the scalar product. And then I claim that these polynomials are almost up to a change of variable, the Fibonacci polynomial. So I define another polynomial, the matching polynomial. It's not exactly the Fibonacci. Matching polynomial can be defined for any graph. So the general definition applied to the segment graph is the following. The matching polynomial is -1, the number of elements of the matching, multiplied by x power, the number of isolated points of the matching. So you see the variable x is not put on the dimers, it is put on the isolated point, which means there is no dimers covering this point. So here I have, for example, x3, and you keep a -1 for each dimers. So you can write this also this way. It's -1 power k, the number of matching, of k matching with on the n elements, and x power n minus 2k, the number of isolated points. So this is the matching of the segment graph. It's a graph formed by all the points 1 to n, and there is an edges between I and I plus 1. Now you take the reciprocal. The reciprocal of the matching means you multiply, it's a polynomial of degree n, you replace x by 1 over x, and you remultiply by x power n to get a polynomial. So the reciprocal is just what we are doing. I can write this way also. It's the sum of all matching over the segment graph of minus x2 power the number of edges, of red edges, the number of... See, to replace x by 1 over x and multiply everybody by x power 1 means you replace x by 1 and you replace -1 by minus x2. So you are putting the x on all the points where there was no x before. Reciprocal of the polynomial, when you have a graph with some point are weighted x, means you delete the x all this point and you put back the x on the point before which have no x before. So you get this. So each dimer now is weighted minus x2. And so this reciprocal matching polynomial is fn of x2. It's a Fibonacci polynomial when you replace x by x2. Now what is the relation with the Chebyshev second kind? The Chebyshev second kind is just the matching polynomial when you replace x by 2x. So from Chebyshev, you go to the matching, replace x by 2x. For the matching, you take the reciprocal, and you get the Fibonacci, but you have to replace x by x2. So it's almost the same polynomial, but it's better to really detail the relation between this and to put different notation for each polynomial. So to prove this, I am not going to prove this in the class, but you have to show that they satisfy the same three-term recurrence relation. Any orthogonal polynomial satisfy, any sequence of orthogonal polynomial satisfy a three-term recurrence relation, and you have to show that it's the same recurrence relation. Example, take for n equal 4. So there is this term is x4 in the matching polynomial. Here there is three terms like this with x2, and now one term like this. Replace x by 2 cosinus theta, and you get the nice formula. So when I was in college, in elementary school, I hate trigonometry. Everybody hates this formula. But now you can impress your kids. Now if you can just put this, you can very impress everybody. Wow, you can put the formula immediately. What about the other kind of Chebyshev polynomial? There is two kinds, first and second. Well, it's also related to combinatorics. Instead of Fibonacci, it's Lucas. So it's well known, it's less known than Fibonacci, but Lucas polynomial, which is going to be related to the other Chebyshev. So you have this definition, Chebyshev first kind, cos n theta equal Tn of cos theta. Luca polynomial. So now I take cycle. Instead of segment, I take a cycle of length n with n points, and I can take 2 by 2 disjoint edges. I take a matching on the cycle graph, and I define this as a Luca polynomial. Ln of x equal minus x, same definition. For each red edges, I put minus x, like for the Fibonacci polynomial. For example, the Luca index 4 is 1 minus, is 4 matching with only 1 edges, two matches like this. So the Luca index 4 is 1 minus 4x plus 2x2. You take the reciprocal. The reciprocal of the Luca is Cn of x, C for cycle, is minus 1, the number of matching, x power the number of isolated points, exactly analog to Fibonacci. So this becomes the matching polynomial of the cycle graph, when you put an x on each isolated point. And now the Chebyshev is a Cn of 2x. For example, you have 1 minus 4x plus 2x2. The Luca, so somewhere you have to replace x by x2. Maybe I made a mistake. You have to replace, like for Fibonacci, x by x2 somewhere. Replace x by x2. Luca of x2. Take the reciprocal of Luca, which gives you this. Now take this gives you the matching polynomial of the cycle. Replace each x by cos, and you have to divide by 2, which means I don't put the relation. Yes, here it will be half. You have the half of the matching polynomial of the cycle. When you replace x by 2x, and so I get this formula. For example, cosine 4 theta equal this polynomial, which is Tn of cosine theta. So again, you can impress your kids with immediately get the trigonometric formula for cosine and sine. Again, same recurrence relation. So exercise, what is the relation between Fibonacci and Luca? Fibonacci 2n plus 1 is Fibonacci n multiplied by Luca n plus 1. Not too difficult. With bijection, again. You have to break the segment, put a cycle, and you have to work a little. So complement. I told you that sometime I will open a window where there is some complement with some more general theory, which I will go a little above something with no proof, just some result, which can be really some other part of a deeper part of combinatorics. So when you have any graph, you can define the matching of a graph is a set of 2 by 2 disjoint edges for any graph. And then you can define, for any graph, you can define the matching polynomial of the graph. Matching polynomial of the graph is the sum of all matching of minus 1, the number of edges, number of elements of matching, x power, the number of isolated points. So that you can write also this way, minus 1, number of edges, x power n minus twice number of edges, where n is the number of vertices of the graph. In fact, I go fast. So the perfect matching, it's when the whole graph is covered, or there is no isolated point. Sometimes in the graph theory, they call this one factor. So perfect matching is something very important in some statistical mechanics, like the Ising model. You are going, it's equivalent to count the number of perfect matching in a certain graph. It's a planar graph, and then there is a Castelli method, there is a Pfaffiant, etc., permanent, Pfaffiant, all this. So you have to count the number of perfect matching of some graph, planar graph on the lattice. But here, the matching of a graph, is much more general because you have the whole coefficient. When you have one dimers, two dimers, three dimers, and the perfect matching, it's in fact the constant term of this polynomial, if there exists. Maybe there is no perfect matching. The number of vertices must be even already to have a perfect matching. And you have this very nice proposition that for every graph, the zero of the matching polynomial are real number. And I will give you in one of the following class next year, using heaps of pieces, I will give you a bijective proof of this. Bijective at 98%. Because how can you prove that numbers are real with only bijection? So, but you reduce by bijection, there is a nice interpretation. You reduce it to say, okay, now my zero are the eigenvalue of a symmetric matrix, and I know they are real number. So once you reduce this problem to find the zero eigenvalue of a symmetric matrix, but all these steps can be done bijectively and are related to. It's part.
Zeros of Fibonacci polynomial? Is it something easy?
I don't remember.
So it's not even obvious in that.
No, it's not obvious. It's For example, the Chebyshev polynomial, the zero. So now you can, for the Chebyshev first circle grade, you can easily find the zero. They are the Chebyshev orthogonal polynomial. For a complete graph matching polynomial, we have seen the Hermite polynomial. So we have seen the matching of the segment, matching of the cycle, matching of the complete graph. You remember the first lecture about the Meilleur formula? So Hermite polynomial is the sum of the weight of all this configuration, and it's exactly the matching polynomial of the complete graph. Complete means you can put edges everywhere. So x, number of isolated points, minus 1, the number of edges. And when you sum all this, you get the Hermite polynomial. And finally, the complete bipartite graph. This is complete means that there is all vertices above are connected to all vertices below. And the matching of this graph is going to give you the Laguerre polynomial. So there is 4 family of orthogonal polynomials, the Chebyshev first kind, Chebyshev second kind, Hermite and Laguerre, which can be obtained by matching polynomial. And we know that when we have orthogonal polynomial, then the zero are real number. But in fact, this proposition is much more general. It's general for any graph with a matching polynomial. So easy exercise, find some explicit formula for the coefficient of Hermite and Laguerre polynomial, which are coefficient of such picture and coefficient of involution. So another example, I will go back to Strahler numbers. Strahler number as an application of my main proposition about numerator divided by denominator, which give me the bounded Dick path. And now I am go back to the Strahler number, which involve Fibonacci polynomial. So you remember I have shown this, the Strahler number functional equation, where S and K is a number of binary tree with a Strahler number equal to K. There was a nice functional equation for enumerating this binary tree corresponding to the Strahler number. Now there is on Dick path, there is a certain parameter which have the same distribution as the Strahler number. So Dick path was analogy with bijection with binary tree. Now I define a new parameter on the dig path. Instead of counting dig path by a certain bounded height, I define the logarithmic height of the dig path. It's something different. It's a log base 2 of 1 plus the height. And I take the integer part of this real number. Instead of taking the height, I take roughly the log base 2 of the height. Which means if a dig path has a logarithmic height equal to k, this means that the height of the dig path is between 2 power k plus 1 minus 1 and 2 power k minus 1. It's between the two, so this is something like more or less 2 power k is the height. And so I am able to count the number of dig paths with bounded by this height. That was a very nice thing is I claim that if I take the generating function of dig path, take d of x, the double generating function of dig path of length 2n, such that the logarithmic height is equal to k, analog of Strahler number of binary tree with n vertices, Strahler number equal to k. Let's take this double generating function on dig path. Then I claim that they satisfy the same functional equation as a double generating function for Strahler number. So I have another parameter on dig path where you have to show that dig path satisfies this functional equation of Strahler number. So if you remember the proof of the functional equation of Strahler number, I took a binary tree, then I make a substitution in each vertex of the binary tree by the zigzag line, then I increase my binary tree, I add some leaves, and I get a much bigger binary tree, and the Strahler number was just increased by 1. So we'll prove this proposition in the chapter 3. We will need some bijection on paths, dig paths, and other family of paths. But maybe as a pseudo exercise, you can try to do the analog of dig path, or what we have done on binary tree. So take a dig path of length n, counted by Catalan number. You have to put 2n plus 1. No, dig path is of length 2n, Catalan number n. So you have to take 2n plus 1 point somewhere in the dig to make them growing. Put analog of zigzag tree, and then do something, and then the height of the dig path is going to be about the double of the previous one. And then the logarithmic height will increase by 1. So there is exactly the same similar procedure, a substitution. First, you replace n by 2n plus 1, like for binary tree. Instead of n irrelevant vertices, I have to put 2n plus 1 vertices. So on the dig path, I have already less 2n, so I have to take 2n plus 1. In fact, the number of vertices of the dig path is 2n plus 1. Then do analog of insertion inside of zigzag tree, something counted by 2 power t over 1 minus 2t. Then do something to recover another dig path, and the logarithmic height will have increased by 1. And then you get the solution. They have the same functional equation, so the distribution is the same. The Strahler number of trees according of a counting tree by number of vertices in Strahler number is the same as counting dig path by logarithmic height. But now I know, from this previous theorem, I know how to count dig path bounded by a given height. So if the two objects satisfy the same functional equation, so this was done by Françon, and also he get a bijection. It's a very complicated recursive bijection. But at least he have shown that they have the same distribution. And then Knut, in 2005, he gave a very fantastic direct bijection between dig paths and binary tree. I don't know how he does this. I was with him in Mittag Leffler. He was very interested in Strahler number. I showed him this recursion, a very complicated recursive proof of Françon. And in one night, you have a kind of bijection where you are constructing a tree, you are constructing a dig path, and you have something else, another structure. It's a heaps. Another structure, and when at each time you read the tree, you do something on the extra structure, you add, delete, you do something, then you move. So there is three things moving at the same time, and at the end, you get the bijection. At the end, the auxiliary heap at the end was completely erased, and you have a bijection between binary tree and dig path. So the Strahler number becomes the logarithmic height of the dig path. So applying the previous lemma, then I get that the Strahler number index generating function for dig path or Strahler number with the parameter less equal to k, it's just the ratio of two Fibonacci. So it's bounded by height 2 power 2 power k minus 2. So this is this one plus 1. So this is a generating function for dig path with logarithmic height less or equal to k, or for Strahler number, or for binary tree with Strahler number less or equal to k. So you can get what we have get by experiment. The generating function, the denominator are exactly this coefficient. The sum is a Fibonacci number index 2 power k minus 1, but you get exactly the generating function. Now there is one step more. That's just a brain. When you take, if you want to have exactly the generating function for binary tree with Strahler number equal to k, you have to subtract the one with Strahler number less or equal to k minus the one with Strahler number less or equal to k minus 1. And then there is some nice things happening because of the matching of a segment, because of the trigonometry. Is because we have this. You remember the exercise, this factorization. So in the case n is 2 power k minus 1, n plus 1, 2n plus 1 is this. And so your denominator Fibonacci polynomial factorized as a product of Lucas polynomial on circle. So there is this factorization, and there is more. There is the simplification of the numerator I will not do, but when you subtract this with the same generating function with this, then the numerator will, you will keep the denominator, but the numerator will simplify and be reduced to this monomial. So it is really beautiful combinatorics and relating all this. So the recreational complement, maybe not enough time, so I will finish with. So this is a big window on the Strahler number appear in many different topics. So this I will do next time, but I will finish with another thing. So we have seen in this lecture, we have seen the proof by killing involution. So I give you as a maybe difficult exercise, or not so difficult, medium exercise, to prove the famous Euler pentagonal theorem, again by a killing involution. So if I take the generating function, I go back to partition, and take partition with, it's in French, all the parts are distinct. The number of partitions of n with all the parts are distinct. So instead of the generating function 1 over product of 1 minus qi, now the generating function is just this infinite product of 1 plus qi, because if you have to choose in each of this monomial, you choose 1 or you choose q power something. So if you collect all the choice, this will give you a partition in distinct parts. So it's very easy to show that the coefficient of q power n is exactly the number of ways to decompose n into a partition with all the parts are distinct. But what happens if instead of plus, here it's a plus, what happens if you put a minus? So this was the famous pentagonal theorem of Euler. So we put a minus. At that time, you see, instead of x power 2, they always put xx. So if you put a minus, and probably Euler have done this on a piece of paper. If you take a computer, take the infinite power series, then you get something. There is very few monomial appearing. All the coefficients are plus or minus 1, and some term disappeared. So you can, if you want to guess the formula, you can guess what are these numbers, 2, 5, 7, 12, 15. In fact, these numbers are what is called the pentagonal numbers. If you take a sequence of pentagon, so it's one of them, 1, 5, 12, so there is two pentagonal numbers. So one of the sequence, this one, will be number you can put like pentagon growing and included in each other. This is why it's called pentagonal numbers, the number of points of such a picture. So in fact, the coefficient of q power n in this series, the number of partitions of n, sorry, I forget to translate. It's a number of partitions of n with an even number of distinct parts, minus the number of partitions of n with an odd number of distinct parts. In your big product, you have to take all partitions with an even number of parts minus all partitions with an odd number of parts. So there's going to be a lot of cancellation. And what remains, again, you have to find an involution. Find an involution on the set of partitions, such that the involution, you have to delete a part or add a new part. Take a partition with distinct part. So the best way is maybe to delete the topmost row. So you take the point and you have to put them in the diagram below, but in a bijective way. Or else, you have to take your point you put below and put them back on the top row. So the number of points must be invariant. The weight must be invariant, but the number of parts will increase or decrease by 1. So try to imagine this involution, which pair a diagram, a Faraday diagram with all the parts as distinct, into another Faraday diagram where there is one row less or one row more, and such that what you have deleted, the point of the row, must be split into the diagram below in a bijective way. And where you cannot do that, it's exactly the pentagonal numbers. So the weight must be invariant. Total number of points of the Faraday diagram. You delete one row, you add one row, and when you delete a row, the points are going to be added to the diagram below. Or else, second case, you take some point of the diagram of the partition, you put them above. So you must be able to do that if you put point less than the length of the... And it must be in the set of partitions with distinct part. And where you cannot do this involution, it will be the pentagonal numbers. So such proof have been given, I think, there is a bijection a long time ago, in the 20s or 30s. It was, I think, Glaisher bijection. So try not to see any book. Try to find yourself this bijection. Okay, so I think I will stop here because... So next time I will open maybe 10 minutes and show you the beauty of Strahler number in other science. And then we will go next time with algebricity, where some structures are counted by algebraic generating function. But then the decomposition, the fact it's an algebraic system is hidden. Means like the planar maps, directed animal, all this, it's not obvious to see that to find the system of algebraic equation. For the moment, we have obviously find the rational generating function, the algebraic generating function. So next time we will do especially the planar maps and directed animal. Okay, thank you very much.